From near-death experiences to the devastation of homelessness, how and where do we find the will to overcome insurmountable odds? And when we do overcome these challenges, how do we pass that story of survival on to others? Life on the Rocks is that place where these stories are heard from those who live to tell them. And now, here is your host, Kyle Miller.
Welcome to the show where today's guest shares how he grew up in the Bronx in the 70s and 80s. He was kicked out of school for carrying a firearm in the 7th grade, to being on BET and MTV with a top 10 record on billboards, to finding God and striving to stay on his path of real estate. Please welcome Shamus Goss. Welcome to the Life on the Rocks, brother. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Are you ready to get this thing started?
Let's get it started. I appreciate you having me here. You know, this is it's a privilege to be here.
Man,
looking forward to it.
I just met you recently, and man, like when you see this guy, you look at him and you go, dude, this guy's like 25. And I was like listening to his stories. He's got all these stories and life experiences, right? And we were chatting, and then like you said, well, how old do you think I am? Because I was blown away, man. I was like, how old is this guy? He's got all this stuff going on. And how old are you, actually?
49.
49. I was like, this guy, he looks 25. I tell you what, man. But it was just wild. But anyway, let's get into it, man. I was listening to your stories of what you had going on in your life and everything that happened to you and in your life and how you were brought up. And I just thought that would be an awesome share for this podcast.
Let's do it.
Cool, man. So let's start it off, man.
So I'll kind of tell you a little bit about how I grew up. I'm originally from the South Bronx. I was born there. Single parent household. It was me. I have one brother and two sisters. And, we grew up in the South Bronx, and I was born in 73. In the 70s and 80s, the Bronx was crazy. Like it was Fort Apache. Like crack started to hit and everything. New Jack City came out. Like it was crazy. I look back now, we watch videos of that time. And it was like, man, like most of the buildings was abandoned. Like I remember we used to play in abandoned buildings. That was the thing. We find an abandoned building and we run through the building, making sure we don't fall through floors or nothing like that. But I was raised with my two sisters and my brother. Like I said, my mother was a single parent. I only met my father like twice in my entire lifetime. But I had to learn how to survive fast in the South Bronx. 8, 9 years old, I was already taking trains an hour and a half away to play basketball. When most kids, your parents won't even let you go to the end of the driveway. I'm taking a train from the Bronx to Brooklyn at like 8 years old, 9 years old. And they're like, yo, where's this kid going? I'm like, I'm going to play ball. So, I wouldn't change anything. The way I grew up, it definitely prepared me for life. You definitely, coming from the Bronx, just my experience, like you had to have thick skin,
right?
Super thick skin.
Yeah. I'm not from New York. I'm not a city guy, man. I live on 50 acres. I got cows, dude. Like you and I could not have grown. We're not like totally different scenarios, right? So like, what's it like growing up in that? I mean, did you involved with shootings? Did you see people die? All that stuff?
At 8 years old, I seen my first body.
Is that what you call them? Just body? Yeah. That's what it's called?
First body. It was me and my best friend, Anthony. He passed away. But we was outside playing in the courtyard, and we hear these guys arguing. One is yelling from the window. The other one's yelling from outside. And then they confrontation, and one of them runs up in the building. Me and my friend out there, we're still playing, and all we hear is gunshots. It was like, oh, somebody got shot. So me and him go run up in the building, and we run right into a puddle of blood on the first floor. That was the first time I seen a body. I was about to be like 9 years old.
Wow. And
it was funny because a friend of mine, when I was about 18, 19, he came from upstate to come live with me. He moved down and he was there for about 3 or 4 days, and he saw 2 people get shot. He was like, I'm going back home. I was like, what? He's like, this is not normal, man. Like, this is not normal. You guys are seeing people get killed every other day. I'm like, yeah. Like for me, that was normal. Like I seen several people get shot. I've been shot at, that's how it goes, especially from where we came from in the Bronx. Like our area was Larry Davis was from our area. He's the guy that went all over the news for shooting at cops and everything. Like our area was crazy. Yeah, it was definitely crazy.
So how do you grow up in that environment, right? Like seeing people die, seeing that stuff happen left and right all the time. How do you get out of that? How do you jump out of that and like create, like right now you're a real estate investor. I mean, you got so much stuff going on. How do you get out of that mindset and change? Where did it change for you? Or did you always have it?
So I always been an entrepreneur, right?
Okay.
I'll tell you. So in where I lived at in the Bronx, we had my building, and right next to my building was my school, CS50, right?
Okay.
So we had 36 apartments in our building, right? Half of them was drug spots, weed, cocaine, heroin, everything, right?
Okay.
So what I would do is I would knock on the doors. I call them the street pharmacists because a lot of the stuff is legal now, right? And I used to tell them like, hey, I'll go to the store for you, but I'm going to charge you 50 cents or $1 because if you leave, you're going to lose a customer, right?
Right.
So I took a bunch of the guys down to the bodega store because it literally, you cross the street and the store was right there. And I said, listen, hey, if I come down here to buy beer and cigarettes and Dutches, I know I'm only 8, 9 years old. It's not for me. It's for these guys. So that's how I started making money. I was running, and my mother used to be like, where the hell are you getting this money from? Because I would come in the store, I would come in the house with like $8, $10, $20 a day. And this is like in the early 80s. You know, that's equivalent to $500 to $1,000 now. And I told us I'm running to the stores for everybody. And then I used to get up in the morning because I knew the other kids wasn't going to do it. I would get up in the morning, I would cross the street, go to the bodega, right? Just show you my age. They had penny candies. Every candy was a penny. I would buy like 200 or 300 pieces of candy because once school started, they wouldn't let you cross the street. So I would buy 200, 300 pieces of candy because I knew when lunchtime came, everybody was going to have a sugar rush and like, yo, they 5 cents. You can't go across the street and get them. They 5 cents. So that was like my first form of entrepreneurship ever since I was like 8 or 9 years old. So that grind always been there. But that's a good question that you asked because they asked me that question. And to be honest, I don't know what the one thing is that can get you out of that mind state. I know what it was for me. In the 7th grade, I got kicked out of the 7th grade with a firearm. Right? I got kicked out of 3 schools in like 60 days. And they was like, listen, you can't go to no more schools in the Bronx. You either have to go to Spofford, which was a juvenile detention center, or you have to leave the Bronx. So my sister, she was living in Spring Valley, New York. And she took me from the Bronx, which is apartment buildings, shootings every night, to Spring Valley, where now my sister was married, lived in a house. It was in a cul-de-sac. We had grass. That's what changed everything for me. Because in the 7th grade, I was playing basketball, and they let me play basketball even though I was failing all my classes. When I got to Rockland County, they was like, if you fail any classes, you cannot play basketball. And I love basketball. So from the 7th grade to the 12th grade, I never failed another class.
Because you wanted something.
Yeah, I wanted to play ball. And I knew if I failed, they wouldn't let me play ball. In the Bronx, I could fail it. The fact that I was a point guard and I could score, they was like, we're going to let you play. So I'm like, I could fail class and play ball. I'm living it up, right? So that's what changed for me. It was just seeing that environment change. First of all, coming from a single family household, I seen a husband and a wife. I'm like, okay, so that's the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be 2 loving human beings. And my brother-in-law, to me, he became my father because he's the one that guided me from a very early age. So I think it was seeing that. That's what shifted my mindset to be like, you know what, I want something better for my family. And, that's where everything came from.
So I interviewed the Mathis twins. They're down there in Miami. I don't know if you know them.
Yeah, I know.
And they talked to me about growing up in the hood and how it basically made them self-reliant.
100%.
And like they wouldn't trade it for the world because they knew if they were going to do anything, it was all going to be on them. And they had to get through the stuff. Nobody else is going to help them. And just made them self-reliant to be able to do the things and take the risks and know that, hey, we got each other's backs we're going to make this stuff happen. And I just thought that was when you were talking about that, I just kind of was going back to that. So you feel the same way?
Same exact way. You definitely, like I was telling my buddy the other day, I said in New York, you have to have your head on a swivel.
Right.
You may either get stabbed, shot, robbed, abducted, carjacked. So you definitely have to be alert at everything that goes around. And when you're alert at a very early age, you start to take risk because you know, okay, I know I can get out of this. I know I can get out of that. And I think for me, young getting in trouble, I had a high tolerance level for risk. I'm like, man, I may go to jail, but I'm still gonna do this right here, you know?
Right.
And I
Right.
took that into business. So definitely, from a very, very early age, I had to be super independent. I became the man of the house at an early age in my teens, So I wouldn't change nothing. I wouldn't change nothing because if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be the person I am today. Like my tolerance level, like I'll go homeless if I believe in something. Like, hey,
Right.
because I know I got enough skill set to get me out of this position.
Right. No, I agree with you on that. Now, you go up, you live with your sister, your brother-in-law becomes like a father figure for you. You're able to learn some stuff from him and see how that relationship worked as far as like a loving couple. Like what happens from there? What do you do next?
So the crazy thing about my brother-in-law is he was a street guy. So he
Okay.
did 8 years in prison,
Okay.
right? Messing with Nicky Barnes and all of those guys, the big guys that you hear stories about. But what I found fascinating by him is the fact that he was a street guy. He did 8 years in prison, and when he came out, he became an engineer. I'm like, this dude is super smart. Like, you go from prison to an engineer, like he's metal designing buildings and stuff like that, and he was extremely smart.
Yeah.
So I looked at it as like kind of at like me. I'm like, okay, I'm a street guy, but I'm moving into business. So that kind of gave me the green light to like, hey, you can come from the street and be troubled and then get into business. So 14, I moved up there around 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. I moved out at 18. I didn't do too good my last year of school. Even though I graduated, I still was getting in a lot of trouble. So they kind of came to me and said, hey, we're going to let you go 6 months early. And I was
Okay.
like, are you going to give me my diploma? Because I promised my mother before she passed away, I need a diploma. They said yes. And it was like, you can't go to your graduation. You can't even come back to the school. And I was like, deal. Just give me the diploma and I'm gone. So once I graduated from high school, I moved back down into the city. And my first venture I got into was in the music industry.
Okay.
So I started in the music industry, had my own record label, once again, independent, running my own company, putting records out that hit Billboard. I was on, BET, MTV, and everything. So that's what I did right after I got out of high school.
Gotcha. And so you were producing records. So you had a studio and people were coming in and cutting records and cutting songs.
Yeah. We was actually putting them out. Yeah, we actually was renting studios, but we would write the songs, get the beats, Then once the records get produced, we press them up on either CD, cassette, or vinyl, ship it to the radio stations, and push it just like a major record label would.
Nice. Now, so what happens after that?
So the music industry, I was in the music industry from 1993. That's when I put my first record out. Had some success with it. It went top 10 on Billboard. So I kept putting records out until about 2002.
Okay.
And I invested about 300,000 into the record label. I didn't make my money back. That was my first downturn. I had to take a break, and that's when I actually walked away from the music industry. When I walked away from the music industry in 2004, I actually had a record that was top 10 on Billboard. And my friends like, yo, you're crazy. I'm like, I can't do this no more.
Really?
Yeah.
So you had top 10 on Billboard.
When I decided to quit. Yep.
So you decided to quit. You said this isn't what I want, or this isn't like what drove that?
So when I first started out in the music industry, I started out as an artist. And
Okay.
I was always an artist, but I was a solo artist.
Okay.
Then I realized quickly that I had more fun in the business, on the
Okay.
business side, right? One, I'm a street dude. I don't want to get on stage in front of 5,000 people. I don't know if they got a firearm or if it's somebody that I had a problem with in the past. So I'm like, I don't really like this whole artist thing, even though I
Right.
was good at writing songs and producing songs and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So I decided to start a group, and I put a group together. We started working together like in '98. And then we worked together for about 4 years. I financed everything. I was the one that went in and got all the producers to do the beats and everything.
Okay.
And I just felt like everybody wasn't holding their weight. I was the one that was sacrificing not only the time, but I was the one that funded everything. And, my wife is, I'm not seeing my kids, and my wife is telling me the kids saying that they hate me because they don't see me. So I was at a point where I had to choose, do I keep going on this path to continue my career?
Yeah.
Or do I take a break right now and attend to my family? And I chose to take a break and attend to my family because I knew how I grew up. And
Right.
I didn't want to do that to my wife and my kids. So I was like, hey, I got to put everything on hold. I actually walked away. I was frustrated with everybody. I told everybody to get out of my house. That was it. And I walked away from the music industry like that.
I mean, that takes a lot. It's just like, hey, I've done this for the last 9, 10 years and I'm done. Like I'm moving on to something else, which is pretty fascinating because there you're saying in myself, I have the conviction of myself that I can make anything happen.
Exactly.
And it may not be this, but we're going to move on to something else.
Exactly.
And that you were sitting there thinking, I mean, this wasn't just a whim thought. You wanted to be more time with your kids. You wanted to spend more time with them. You wanted to be around them. You didn't want them to grow up without a dad like you grew up.
Yeah.
And then so you put your foot down, you say, everybody out, we're done. Like, what's the next thing that goes through your head, like after that thought, right? Now we're sitting there going, I don't have anything now.
And that's exactly what it was. I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, we're 2004, we just moved down. I'm like, man, we got a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. And all I knew was music and the streets.
Right.
That's all I knew. It was the music. So I turned back to the streets. I started hustling again because that's all I knew.
Right.
And I was good at it. I was good at it. Yeah, I was good at it. Knock on
Yeah.
wood, I never got arrested or nothing like that.
Right.
But what I would do is I would go and make chunks of money, and then I would try to invest that in a business that can pull me out of the streets. And that's what I wound up doing with my uniform business. So 2004, 2002, I decided to hit the streets again, hustle again. I made enough money, and then somebody put me on the path of athletic apparel. And at the
Okay.
time, I was working at Walmart in the pharmacy overnight. I was going to school for construction management, and I was working at a gym, right? And I
Okay.
remember sitting in Walmart, and I would go to school from like 7 in the morning till about 11. Then I would take a nap. I had to be at the gym at 4 o'clock to 9. And then I would have to be at Walmart from 11 to 7.
Right.
So as soon as I would get in Walmart, the first thing I had to do, because I was bored, was I have to go get me a 6-pack of Mountain Dew and some Oreos to just keep me awake. Because I
Uh-huh.
was tired. I was tired. I was up all day. And I remember sitting in the break room, and the guy was like, yeah, I've been working at Walmart for, I think he said like 10 years. He's like, when I started, I was making like 5 and change. Now I'm making like $7. And right there, it hit me. I'm like, if I work anywhere for a decade, I'm going to own it. Right.
Right.
So
Right.
I got up, walked to the front, and I asked the manager, I said, listen, can I get my paycheck? It was payday. And she said, well, we're not supposed to pay you until the end of the shift. I'm like, listen, I don't have any food. I'm hungry. She gave me my check. I cashed it. I took my apron off. I was like, I quit, right? So I quit Walmart, left that. And I was working at the gym, and a guy came in and was like, man, you should sell uniforms. You're working at this big sports academy. There's hundreds of teams in there. And I'm still running around on the streets. I'm like, man, I'm not selling. Ain't no money in selling no uniforms. So that was October. So he had called me one day. He said, hey, let me take you out to breakfast. So when I get to breakfast, he had business cards. He's like, man, I'm telling you, just give it a shot. From October to December, I sold about 80K to 100K worth of athletic apparel. I
Uh-huh.
made 18,000 in 90 days. I'm like, I am a uniform seller now. This is this is what I'm doing, And that's
Yeah.
how that company got started. We scaled that. We got to 7 figures with that company,
Nice.
you know.
Nice. So now you're uniform, you're rocking and rolling. Are you like the kids are at home? You're getting family time now?
Yes and no. The kids was because we had warehouses.
Okay.
So the kids would have to be in the warehouse because we was still working, doing 80 hours a week. But at least it was 80 hours and the kids were there. We could take breaks and play video games. And we had a big warehouse, so they're riding scooters around the warehouse. So that was our way of spending more time with the kids.
But I talk to a lot of guys, and a lot of guys remember the times that they spent with their parents working.
Yeah.
Like I don't talk to a lot of people, and they remember the times sitting on the couch with their mom watching a movie.
Yep.
I talk to a lot of guys, and maybe it's just the success. Like I talk to a lot of successful, what I call successful people who are doing things in life and trying to make things happen. And they remember going back and they remember riding, going to dad's work or riding with mom to work and spending the day with them doing their things. And maybe they had like a little job to do. Or, your kids are going to remember that all the time. They're going to remember the smell of that warehouse and go, hey.
They say that too. They're like, man, they remember the screen smell and everything.
But
we always have conversations about it.
It's just those little things in life where we don't think, we're trying to make stuff happen and do that kind of stuff. And, it may not be fun or glamorous or anything, but those kids are going to remember it because it's different. They're spending time with dad. He's not out and he's just not out doing his thing,
Yeah.
But they're spending time with dad. They're seeing what he's doing. They're seeing the work ethic that you're putting in. And then, our only hope is that rubs off on them. Right. And they see that, and we can, kind of mold them into a productive human being in society.
Yes.
And but yeah, I remember doing that stuff with my dad, and hopefully my kids remember going through and blue taping all the houses. When we got started, like I used to give them the blue tape, and all right, mark this spot here, mark that spot there.
Yep.
And trying to teach them. And now they're like, do we have to stop at another house? Yeah, bud. Yeah, we're gonna stop by real quick.
They'll realize it when they get in their 20s. They're like, oh, we know why dad was doing this.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully, hopefully we rub off on them and it all becomes positive. That's the goal. So how long do you do the uniform business, and then what do you do next? Because I know that's not the end stop there.
Yeah, no. So we ran the uniform company from 2004 to 2000 and I would say 16.
Okay.
We closed it down in 2016, and that was our peak year. It was the first year we did $1 million, and we had like a 50% profit margin. And all my buddies was like, "Yo, you are crazy." I'm like, "Nah, I haven't taken a vacation in 7 years. I don't care how much money I'm making." I'm like, "I can't do this no more."
Right.
So we closed it down, and we lost everything. Like, because I had some funds put to the side, but we had purchased 5 acres, and I was like, "Okay, we closed the uniform company down. We bought the 5 acres. I said, hey, we're gonna renovate this property, and then we're gonna build a house for each of the kids on the property, right?
Uh-huh.
And then a light renovation I was told was gonna be about $15K. Man, we're 60 grand in. I'm like, listen, I did not sign up for this,
right?
And we wind up losing everything. The house went into foreclosure. We dragged it out for a year and a half by filing Chapter 11. Then when that wore down, we filed Chapter 13. And we wind up short selling it.
Okay.
Right? But for 2 years, those 2 years probably, my wife gets upset when I say this, but those were the two lowest years of my life. Okay. Because I felt like I let everybody down, because everybody follows me.
Right.
But I think
you're the leader of the family.
Yeah, leader of the family, exactly. So I felt I let everybody down. But during those 2 years, I started talking to God more. Clearly talking to him, and I started picking up books. And it was funny because the first book I picked up was The 4-Hour Work Week.
Okay.
But Tim Ferriss, and I felt like he was making fun of me because everything he said was going to happen with the damn business is what happened with the business.
Right.
Right. And then I started studying because from 17 to 44, I didn't pick up a book. I'm like, I'm a hustler. All I know is buy low and sell high. I don't need no books for this.
Right.
And then I started reading more and more business books, and I'm like, damn, they're putting all their gems in there. And it was at one point, I'm not doing it as much now. I still do 1 or 2 books a month, but I was doing a book a week. Like I just my Audible is just like full of every book you can think
Right.
of.
Yeah.
But that was like transition in time. And 2016 to 2018, I didn't really know what I was gonna do. And then we actually was driving down and I seen a bandit sign, and the bandit sign, said real estate investing, learn while you earn. And I went, it was a coaching program. It was a couple of $100, but what they said made sense.
Uh-huh.
And the simple fact that prior to that, I tried to get in real estate 2 or 3 times, because when I first moved down, I went to school for construction management.
Right.
I stopped that. I went to get my real estate license. I'm like, man, this is like going back to college. This is more law than anything. This ain't for me.
Yeah.
And then buying the acres and renovating, that went terrible. So I'm like, yo, this is my 4th shot
Right.
at trying to get into real estate. Got in with some mentors, and let's just say they didn't have my best interest in mind. I brought several deals to the table in 2018, and I only made $8,000 the whole year. And I'm like, this is not going to cut it.
Right.
So that's when I started looking at wholesaling, and I ventured off and did it on my own.
Nice. The real estate deals. So we're 2018, ventured off, started doing your own real estate deals. Yeah. There's just the real estate industry. I mean, you got good people and you got bad people. And I guess it's just like anything else. But you guys really just need to, like, if you're looking to get in the real estate industry, find somebody reputable with lots of referrals, like that you can talk to.
Yes.
And do that, because there's a lot of people that take advantage of them.
Yeah.
Of individuals out there. But
and I was a hustler. Like 4 weeks in, I got my first deal in the contract. I'm like, let's go. And they was like, well, we can't fund this deal. And I'm like, why? And then it was the second deal, the third deal. I'm like, listen, man, I'm trying to pay bills off of this. I'm bringing deal. I may not be good at comprehension and reading books, understand it, but I see numbers like the Matrix, and I know to buy low, what we can renovate it for. I'm really good with numbers.
Yeah.
And I just got a bad taste in my house, and I mean my mouth, and I actually walked away from a project that I was supposed to make about 40, 50K on in like August. I was just burnt out. I was like, this is toxic. I don't want to be involved, because there was a couple of owners and they was arguing with each other. No, I'm not funding this deal. No, I'm not. I'm like, listen, man, I'm caught in a bar fight and I had nothing to do with it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Let me get to the door. I'm going outside.
I hear you. Now you're off on your own, doing your own real estate deals. And what, 2018? Because you kind of...
Yeah, at the end of 2018 is when I came into, I got under the mentorship. 2019, I found my first deal. We closed on our first property in April of 2019.
Okay.
And then I did a couple of more throughout that year. And then I kind of got discouraged, because, again, that was the year where I was bringing the deals to the table, but I wasn't really making money. But I was okay with that, just for the simple fact I was learning a lot. I was hands-on with everything. Right. So then once I figured out, I went to an event in Arizona. I figured out what wholesaling was. I know I needed money to market. So me and my wife, I said, listen, one thing we do know how to do is to sell uniforms. We've been doing it for 14 years.
Right.
Let's relaunch the uniform business. It was the first time we took a vacation in 7 years. We went to Blue Ridge, and I'm telling them, like, listen, it's time to elevate. I need you to start reading more books. You need to start getting more business minded. And we was like, let's go ahead and kick the uniform business off, right? So we kicked the uniform business off. And January through March was one of our busiest times, because it was AAU basketball, and that was one of our primary markets. So I said, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to sell at least, I know I could do at least $100,000. 50 grand is profit. I'm going to take 25K to pay bills for 6 months. I'm going to take the other 25K, pay for marketing.
Yeah.
5,000 a month. We're off and rolling. We got about 52,000 in sales closed, paid. We had about another 50,000 invoiced.
Yeah.
And COVID hit. And I was like, you can't be serious. So the pending orders, everybody canceled.
Right.
Because nobody knew if they was going to be able to play any basketball that year.
Right.
So I'm just sitting there talking to God. I'm like, yo, this is my 4th try. Like, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So I pivoted away from real estate early 2020, and I got into social media marketing. And Amazon automation. So I run a bunch of Amazon stores.
Okay.
And then it was the end of 2021. And I'm sitting in my home office and I look on my whiteboard. I got, I'm gonna get an 18-wheeler. I'm relaunching a t-shirt company. We're doing a private label brand. And I went to get up and I heard God, like me and you are talking right now. And he said, 2 years ago, you asked me to be in this position, financial wise, credit wise, to do real estate. And now you're doing everything but real estate. I continued my walk into the bedroom, told my wife, everything is on hold. I need to pivot back to real estate. And that's exactly what I did. I pivoted right back to wholesaling and fixing and flipping. But this time I had the cash. So
Right.
I didn't need nobody to be a gatekeeper on, I don't think these numbers are right. I got the money. I'll do it myself.
Right. Man, that's awesome. I mean, like, you're going through all this stuff all the time, right? It seems, you did this, you did that. How do you stay positive in that and like keep an outlook? Because there's so many people who get discouraged once and they throw up their arms and go, well, this isn't for me. I guess I'll go back and find a job, or this isn't for me. My dreams aren't ever going to come true of whatever I want in life, right? How do you stay positive through that, man?
To be honest, I feel that I have an obligation to change the trajectory of my family. So it's about everybody that comes after me.
Uh-huh.
I think every family has the one. I think it's one person in every family that is your job to change the trajectory, to change it for the next generations, 2 or 3 generations out. So I think as I got older, when I was younger, my motivation was, my kids are young. I got to make sure I put food on the table. And I was going, and our oldest is 28, our daughter is 25, our youngest is 19. When they moved out and everything, I was telling my wife, I'm like, I'm not motivated no more because
Right.
now I don't have to worry about putting food on the table because our kids can fish for themselves.
Right.
So I had to start digging, and that's when I had to dig inside and pull out like, hey, it's bigger than me. Like I want people and 5 generations out there, but like, hey, Uncle Shamus? Oh yeah, he was the first millionaire in the family, and he changed everything for everybody. So I think that's what keeps me going.
Yeah.
Because plenty of times, it's like you keep getting punched in the face, and and I'm gonna tell you one thing. So when we closed the uniform company down for those 2 years, like we were struggling. Like
Uh-huh.
I was driving for Uber, and that's a issue by itself, right?
Yeah.
And I remember I went and put in an application to work for Amazon as a driver,
Okay.
right? So day 1 and day 2 is training, right? Day 3, we have to shadow somebody. So as I'm shadowing the guy, he's telling me like, hey, when you pull up, you got to run to the property and things like that. And we pull up to another property and it's like 2 mastiffs, and I got 4 Dobermans.
Uh-huh.
It's 2 mastiffs in the yard. He's like, yo, put it on the deck. I threw it on his grass. I'm like, bro, I'm not getting out of the car. I'm not getting bit. This dog is 140 pounds. I'm not getting bit. And he's telling me, the fastest way to the door is a straight line. I'm like, listen, man, I'm not running. I'm not running, right? So day 4, they give me my own truck, and it was only supposed to be half of a route because it's my first day out.
Right.
So as I'm leaving, the guy's like, hey, we need you to switch trucks. They switched trucks for me. It was a full truck. Then I go into a subdivision that has no cell phone reception, and I need my phone to take me to house.
Oh, because you don't have any idea where you're at.
Yeah, like because every package you have to pull the property up, take a picture of it.
Right.
So I'm in this subdivision, pissed, like numerically trying to find houses. Right. And at the end of the day, if you don't have all the packages delivered, you have to call for a rescue. So I call for a rescue. I'm like, hey, I got about 40 packages left. So they came, picked the packages up. I pull into the Amazon platform and dropping the truck off. And the guy, the manager's laughing and everything. He's like, hey, man, how'd your day go? I said, it didn't. I was like, I quit. I took the apron off. I'm like, I'm out of here. That scared me. I'm like, yo, so is this what I have to go back to?
Right.
And it put me right back on the path of entrepreneurship. I'm like, there's no way I could do this. And I just pivoted and went back that way, bro.
You talk to a lot of employee, like a lot of entrepreneurs, and they're like, I'm unemployable. Like I'm the worst.
Yeah. I probably had 6 jobs, and I'm 49. I had probably 6 jobs my entire life, and none of them last longer than 90 days. Because I was always telling the boss what you're doing wrong. This is wrong. This is backwards. This is unproductive.
Right.
And it was like, we didn't get along. So
So you just
I'm unhireable.
just had to do it yourself.
Yeah.
So now with your kids gone, they're doing well in life. How's that?
Yeah.
How's that going?
Yeah, my youngest son, our oldest son, he lives in St. Petersburg. So he's a DJ. He's also into music. Our daughter she has about another year and she's going to get her architecture degree from Kennesaw State. And then our younger son, he's still trying to figure out. He's totally it's funny. So on his yearbook, his picture of his yearbook, you put a quote there.
Right.
He put something like, "I spent 186,000 hours, such and such amount of days for a piece of paper." That was his quote in his yearbook. And my wife was like, "If that's not you, I don't know what is," because I would say stuff like that. So he's thinking about going to college. Because to me, if you're not going to be a lawyer or an attorney, I think in most cases, college is a waste, right?
Yeah. No, I think that too. I think that I think the specialized knowledge of attorneys, doctors, lawyers, those guys, where you're actually going to come out ahead with your, you can actually, the loans that you're going to have to take to be able to do those professions, you're going to be able to pay back. But if you're going to a history major, or something that's not like general studies stuff, like I don't even know what they are, and you're going to come out doing what? Like
40K, 50K a year.
Yeah.
Can't even survive. Yeah.
And you're going to have 100K of debt. And with inflation that's just happened right now with $6 gas, and like,
can't survive.
where are you going to have the money to pay all that stuff back after your living expenses? And you're just not. Yeah. And then the other thing that frustrates me is that you can't bankrupt that. That's going to be on your life forever. So essentially you're a slave.
Yep.
To pay that money back. So I'm not going to force my kids to go to college. I feel like getting around people that are actually doing the businesses, the things that you want to be involved in, getting with them and learning from those guys, saying that, hey, I'll come work for you for free. I'll do this. I'll do whatever, or go work for those people. Listen, I've hired people, and never do I once actually look at their resume and say, what school did you graduate from? High school? What college did you graduate from? I don't care.
It doesn't
because
matter.
I just need to know that you're proficient at doing the job.
Exactly. Just imagine if everybody that took out school loans, instead of taking $100,000 school loan, you took that $100,000 to open up a Subway or a franchise. How many people would be in better positions?
Oh, way better. But it's hard to get those loans.
Yeah. We could talk all day about how this system set us up and everything. So
yeah,
my thing is, is to try to put out as much knowledge as I can and try to inspire as many people as possible that came from what I come from. And I get that question all the time, like, bro, like, how do you keep getting up? I'm just like, I just don't have a choice. Like,
yeah,
I can't, I don't have a choice,
Yeah. No, I love it, man. I love it. Man. And so that's where we're at today. So you're back into real estate, you're wholesaling, you're flipping houses, loving life, got a wife, the kids are doing great. And, just making it happen. What are your goals for the future here coming up?
So our goal is right now is to move in multifamily. We're looking at a couple of 16 and 20 unit apartment buildings.
Okay.
Because with the commercial play, you can buy a property for $2 million, value add, invest $500,000 into it, and it appraises for $4 million, and you got $1.5 million in equity.
Right.
So getting into apartment buildings, my end goal is to be a lender.
Gotcha.
Just to sit on the beach. Somebody wants to borrow $500,000. I pop my laptop, wire them the money, close it down, continue drinking, and that's what I do.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. I love it. Well, dude, Shamus, I appreciate you coming on the show, man, and sharing your stories. Because we sat there at the dinner table and I was just listening to this. I was like, man, this guy. He's got a lot of stuff going on. He's got a lot of things happening in life. I think a lot of people will be interested in hearing that of what you've been doing and what you've gone through. So no, I definitely appreciate it, man.
I appreciate you having me.
Where can people find you online?
Instagram is Shamus Goss on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. It's ShamusGoss is my real name on all of the platforms.
Cool, man. Guys, hit him up. Shamus Goss, Instagram. Look, he's like one dude. You go on look. He's like got it together, like GQ looking guy on Insta. Just take a look at him. Follow him. Dude's a really good guy, really genuine heart, and I just really appreciate you jumping on, brother.
I appreciate you having me, brother.
Thanks.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.